Hello. I think we're live. We are live. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well, and welcome to the first Cloud State of Play live stream. This is going to be a little bit experimental. We're going to be trying a few different things, and yeah, we're just going to see how things really go for today. I'm very pleased to be able to just kind of do something a little bit different. We thought we'll kind of take Cloud State of Play to a different level and just do something in terms of using a live stream for today and just kind of see how we get. Maybe get some guests in as well. Hopefully we'll have a couple of guests dropping in. And if my director, Saim Safdar, would turn up, the host of Cloud Native FM, we might actually have a really good conversation. So you might be joining us as well. Anyway, so let me first of all, take you through kind of what we're trying to do for today. So hopefully we're going to be looking at about 7 topics. So we'll have a look at those in a moment. And also we will have a number of kind of different discussions that we really want to do for today. So we'll go through the topics. We'll introduce everybody into the live stream as well. If you have any questions, please drop them into the YouTube comments, and we'll try and pick those up either as they're coming through or towards the end. We'll try and tackle those as well. So do let us know. We will try and interact as I'm still, we're still kind of looking through that. So we'll try and tackle those for the time being, and then we'll just kind of see how we get on. It's all a bit hectic today, so it's kind of like our first sort of live stream, but hopefully we'll get some good discussions going. We certainly have some fantastic topics that are on our list for today. So we have 7 topics, as we said, so that should be good fun for you. All right, so if you are new to the Cloud Therapist channel, welcome. If you haven't subscribed, please can I ask you just to do a little favor for me and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. It's really cool to kind of have you guys joining us, and we're always welcome to do that. But really to help me out and kind of for me to keep the channel going and to be able to produce more content, such as these new experimental live streams. Going to see how experimental it's going to be today. Would really appreciate it if you can actually do us a favor and subscribe to the channel. That would be really good. So yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, so without any further ado, let me introduce my resident host for Cloud State of Play. For those who actually know what Cloud State of Play is about, let's see if we can actually bring him onto the stage.
It works. Yes. Hello,
Paul Bevan, the ever-present Paul Bevan. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Yeah, fantastic. Good to see you again. How you been?
Oh, fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I could complain, but I won't. Yes.
Excellent. Now, listen, unlike our usual conversation, this is live streamed. Okay, so no swearing, please, Paul.
Would I?
Would you ever do that? Would you ever do that? Exactly. Anyway, yes, I don't know where Saim is kind of disappeared to, so we'll try and get him on. Looks like he's actually on. Let me see if we can get him on very quickly and say hello. Hey, there you are. Oh,
hello.
Hello.
Great to see you. Actually, Sketch, you did a good job. Awesome.
That's what Copilot is for, to help you out in the last few minutes of how do you start a live stream when your director for the live stream is not there.
Really sorry, I'm a little bit late.
But that's okay. That's okay. You can adjust your hair on camera.
Yes,
Saying
absolutely.
That's fine. You're doing fine. You need a bit of gel, maybe a little bit of combing. I obviously don't have to worry about that. You see,
Oh my God.
this is why I shave. Is because of all these live streams. I don't have to worry about my hair. So
I'm jealous. I'm now jealous.
Fantastic. All right. So the ever-present Paul Bevan is with us. Paul is retired, not retired. He used to be. What did he used to be, Paul? You give us a little description.
I'm a long time in the industry as a and marketing with various companies in IT. In recent years, having left sort of corporate world, I'm a sort of poacher turned gamekeeper, and I went to be an IT analyst for a company called Blur Research. So trying to keep the marketeers and the vendor community honest, I think, is the best way of describing that.
Fabulous. Okay, so just before we proceed, Saim, are you in the director's chair? Are you able to control everything? Yes, just to make sure.
Yes, absolutely. I have all the control with me. Good.
Okay, your mic is a little bit low. Just to let you know, see if you can increase the gain on your mic if you can. But otherwise, we're good. We're good. Okay.
Okay, good.
Fantastic. All right. So yeah, as I was saying in the blurb, the intro, the preamble, we have an agenda going. So we will have hopefully some folks joining us for today. So Cheryl Hung, who's from the Cloud Native FM, or rather the Cloud Native London Meetup, I should say. So I'm advertising you so much, Saim. I can't keep your channel is on my tongue all the time. So Cheryl Hung, Cloud Native London Meetup. She's ex-ARM, and she will be joining us as well. So hopefully tackle some of the topics and go through those. So we'll be doing that fairly shortly. I think we're still on time, so that's good. And also Steve Fenton from Octopus Deploy hopefully will be joining us as well to look through some of the topics. So we kind of staggered the guests. They'll kind of be joining us a little bit later on, but we'll get cracking after the run through the topics. So talking of the topics, let's have a look at the topics that we have lined up. We said we have 7 for you. Hopefully we'll make it through all of them. Some people might fall asleep. Some people might have to leave and go and deal with dinner or partners, wives, whatever, or husbands or something. I don't know, whatever. Or children even, maybe. So hopefully my children are going to be disturbing me, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, let's go through the topics very quickly. So I have shared these with everybody, so hopefully everybody's got all the notes and everything that I've shared with you on those. So first topic is the world's data centers total by countries. There's a really good chart that's come out. Lots of people on LinkedIn have picked up on it. I thought it would be a really good kind of way to start and see where the race for data center construction is right now. No guesses as to who actually is the number one on that, but we'll share some details on that. Second topic, which I'm really looking forward to, is the Aviatrix post. So they put out something around sort of the 0-day sort of exploits that Anthropic's Mythos, which is their new model, has actually discovered, and their kind of response to how to deal with those. They actually do lay out a very good logical sort of approach to how exploits, can be, or how you can exploit exploits, so to speak. But the article, I think, does tackle that very well, and we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. The third topic is AI agent governance gap. So this is what CISOs should be, what CISOs should really know about the AI agents governance gap. Now, there's a lot around this, I think, but we'll kind of try and focus on that particular report that that we've kind of picked up on that. So we'll hopefully see what that is all about. And then we can have a little discussion in regards to what is the impact of AI agents and having a kind of governance to them and so on. So one of my friends is really into AI agents and the governance, AI governance, and so on. So just quick shout out to Danette. Hopefully you're watching. And Danette is really into this sort of stuff. She has her own consultancy agency around sort of AI and governance and regulations and sovereignty and things like that. So quick shout out to Danette Koopsteek. So on to the fourth one, which is France says adieu to Windows and says, what is it? What is hello in French? Anybody?
Bonjour. Hello.
Bonjour.
Hello.
Okay.
Bonjour.
Hello to Linux. So adieu to Windows, hello to Linux. Now, this is going to be an interesting topic. Can't wait to get into this one. I think it's going to be good fun. So there, obviously, the French government is kind of doing some juggling around and changing various things. So we'll have a look at what that actually means and what the impact is, and maybe actually dig into some of the previous history around when people have tried to replace Windows with Linux. Number 5, why is the CNCF shaping AI to fit its purpose? So we've noticed not recently, this has been actually around for a long time. I've been banging this drum for probably years now, and that the CNCF, this whole cloud native space and the open source space seems to be kind of shaping AI into what they want it to be, rather than actually kind of trying to either support it or just kind of let it go, just kind of go and do your thing, AI. They're actually kind of molding it and shaping it and putting it into their sort of tooling and frameworks and things like that. So we're going to examine that a little bit more. There was actually a post and a video that came out on Newstack recently, so we'll have a look at that and see what the impact of that is, what's the implications of the CNCF doing that. And then hopefully we'll have time for the last 2 topics. These are kind of optional a little bit, just depending on our time today and how the discussion goes. But the HPE's, number 6 is the HPE's innovation black hole. So are they even trying anymore? This is actually a post that came out from David Linthicum. So David, if you're watching, shout out to you. This was, I do agree actually with David on this particular one. And it just seems to be a symptom really of that kind of, data center vendors and kind of where they are and what they're really trying to sort of pivot towards. Now there's sort of AI and AI agents are happening and things like that. So we'll have a look at kind of where HPE is and what they're doing. And then finally, we have a sort of a trivial topic, the top 35 leading thought leaders. Now, I'm not sure the person who posted this or the organization that posted it actually check their headline, because leading thought leaders is a kind of, is that circular? What is that? I can't even make out what that means. Anyway, so yeah, but no, really, that is the title of it, and we will go through that. I kind of stopped. I think I stopped it after the first category, because you'll see why. Because the what you would expect to be in that first category are actually there and nobody else. So yeah. Anyway, it was interesting to just kind of we thought we'll pick up on that. Okay, so let's move on to our first category. So our first category: world's data centers total by country. Now, this is a chart that was produced in a post. Actually, a couple of people picked up on this as well. A guy called Guy Massey also posted on it as well. He actually had a little bit more stats on the article, but there's clearly a chart which came out as part of the as part of this particular post. Yeah, and it's kind of really just a sort of a top 20, whatever it is, of data centers by country. So yeah, no points for guessing who number 1 is. The United States, of course, with over 4,000 data centers. So that's around 70% of the global internet traffic apparently flows through North Virginia. Is that the same North Virginia that crashed recently with AWS in the US? But anyway, so yeah, that's kind of it. Paul, what was your thing? Was there anything on the chart that kind of surprised you, first of all?
Oh no, nothing at all surprised me. Partly because it's comes from an online map that I use myself, which is called datacentermap.com.
Okay.
And that's a real time, and you can drill right down not only into individual countries, but to individual sites and get their address, their actual physical address of the data center. So it's real time, and I noticed from the figures that that must have been done, I don't know, taken some months ago, if not even a year ago, because the figures have slightly changed. They haven't changed the overall ratings, but the only thing I would note is that under if you look at datacentermap.com today, UK has now surpassed Germany by 1.
Okay,
right. 515 to Germany's 540. But that just shows. I mean, it's actually quite a useful tool. You can drill right down to areas problems are. So, for example, you can look at North Virginia and go,
yeah,
my goodness me, no wonder it's they're moving data center sort of new builds further away. I mean, South Virginia is now becoming, people trying to keep close to the East Coast are moving to South Virginia because of challenges with getting sites and challenges with, power, etc. But also where all the other ones are, so it's interesting from that point of view, and you can start to see where some of the secondary markets are building up, particularly in Europe. Europe's been dominated by what they call flat D, which is Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and Dublin. That was the sort of the tack on at the end. So yeah, just useful, but it just gives you a very clear picture of the lead the United States has got in the development of data centers.
Yes, I presume we're kind of expecting. Are we expecting also? Well, I'm presuming it's going to surpass or go even further now with this sort of AI race, kind of being on.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the amount of stated intention, if you like, to build, and there's a discussion we can have on that, because you can look at figures that say we're going to go to X number of gigawatts by 2030, and that will depend very strongly on actually getting spades in the ground, as they call it. And there are so many delays in the supply chain at the moment that some of those figures are a little optimistic, I think. But nonetheless, there's a tremendous growth of data centers because of AI. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Sorry, Saim. Go ahead.
Is it a right screen? Look at this is the map. This is what we're talking about, Richard. Can you see the screen right now?
Yes.
Datacentermap.com that the Paul is talking about as well. So there's a question. So I'm checking where the UK is. I think I need to check at the control. I look at it.
There is a control somewhere where you can actually go and ask to see the UK, and it will go straight to it. I can't think where it is without looking at that one, without going on it myself. Hold on.
But thank you very much, Paul, for actually mentioning this, because I wasn't aware of that. So I will drill more into it as well. And
you can drill right down to individual countries, individual cities. So you can see how many there are in Slough versus in London, just to the west of London, how many in the Docklands in London. You can see where some of the new ones are going, but these are all live data centers.
And the growth, Paul, in the UK, just kind of focusing on that for a minute, is it still, I don't know if you kind of, you've checked this map regularly, but is the growth still in that sort of west of London, that sort of M4 corridor, as we call it, and so on? Is it still there?
No, not so much now. Certainly AI has changed the, where you place things, particularly training of AI, but even the inferencing side. So what we're starting to see is north of London, in what we call, for the global audience, I wonder where the hell Hertfordshire is, but there's a sort of Hertfordshire, Essex arc on the outskirts of the M25, circular motorway around London, that's starting to see certainly some build and quite a few plans in place. But what we're also seeing is further up the northeast coast, because one of the things about the UK, and this is relevant for other countries too, is that because we are so dependent on renewables and particularly wind, most of our wind farms are just offshore off the northeast coast up there. So, OpenAI have just put off their Stargate one. They've not cancelled it, but they've delayed its operation. That was going to be just north of Newcastle. There's been a new announcement for North Lincolnshire. So again, that's right on that coast. And you'll see more and more. They won't show on that map yet because they're not operational. But what we're starting to see is a move away from the London market, simply because the land, it's difficult to get new land. It's expensive, and getting on the grid, all the flat D markets are challenged with grid power. So, quite apart from real estate cost.
Is it the one? Why is if you look at the map? One thing I'm looking at the map. This area is getting more crowded inside of the data center. Is there any particular reason to that?
Yeah, there's two. There's one cluster which is on the sort of it's not far from central London, but it's in what they call the Docklands area of London.
Oh.
And that's where the sort of internet, major internet point of presence comes up. So if you like, one of the things that you're seeing with data centers is that they cluster around good networks.
Okay.
That was the historical thing. I mean, now we've got power as an issue and all sorts of others. The west, there's another cluster just to the west of London in a place called Slough. That's where the international subsea cables, they come up in Cornwall, right down in the southwest corner, but then they go underground and then pop up again and give you the points of presence just west of London. And so all the big co-location providers, I mean, Equinix have got about 6 data centers in Slough now, and their focus is on the financial services market in London, because you need, low latency, high volume transactions. So those were the two. Whereas the Docklands was very much around the internet. So that's a sort of internet exchange point. So yes, there are some, and that's why you're seeing a bit more spread out, because AI doesn't need the same sort of interconnects and the same sort of requirements as a global financial services organization, trading markets, those sort of things will have very different requirements. So you will see, Britain will get more spotty if you look at that map.
Oh my God. Jeff, one question for Paul is, what does the green represent in this map? Like we have blue and green and black, I think, in the coloring. Is there?
I'm not aware of those. I don't think I've ever spotted that, Sam. You've got better eyesight than me. I don't think there's any particular. It might be to do with which are the co-location ones and which are hyperscalers or which are private data centers. That's probably what it is. I haven't
they could be. They could
be. The majority though are co-location.
Yeah, they could be also 100% renewable or something.
Oh yes, carbon
Could be. Although if anybody's 100% renewable in the UK, they're doing well.
Yes, but now the black one is making my curiosity high. What the black dot means?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see a key on the map, so
without me sort of stopping talk, I'm not good at multitasking. I was going to look at another screen and see if I can get up data center map, and I might be able to tell you, because I could zoom in on it much better than what I can see at the moment. But
Richard, I'm checking. Richard, are you nearest to the data center?
I'm sort of in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I'm not too far from one.
To the north of that big blob, we're sort of south of Birmingham, north of London. So, and we haven't got any. I haven't got. Northampton is the nearest. There's a couple of data centers in Northampton, but they're quite old-fashioned, old co-location ones. So,
I feel like in the near future, similar to the Premier League, that every city has a football team. Every city has its own data center.
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing we're seeing with data centers too, and I think actually the States are getting it probably even worse than we are here in the UK. I know it's been an issue in countries like the Netherlands, is that they're starting to get not just the problems of power, but actually local residents starting to protest about the arrival of data centers. So it's an interesting one. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, the Netherlands is the most densely populated country in Europe. So, they value their green spaces, and more data centers is not something they enjoy particularly. And we get it here. And I've noticed more and more opposition groups in the States starting to spring up. Quite often it's noise that's driving them in the States.
The post on this one, Paul, as well, said that there is, I mean, one of the other reasons is that the US is kind of more consolidated. It's one language. The deals are larger, so 2 or 3 times kind of what you get in Europe. It's a higher cloud utilization. Hyperscalers are all native, faster buying cycles. So that was kind of the advantages that the US has, and then versus kind of Europe being more fragmented, different languages, more regulation, sovereignty concerns, smaller deal sizes, and certainly slower decision cycles. And I think continentally speaking, that's certainly the case. And I think you and I have spoken about this before, where we've seen different gears, different speeds for what the UK is kind of doing, even just on open source and cloud native and cloud in general versus kind of in the continent.
Yeah, but you have to look at data centers. It's an outlier in terms of cloud state of play because it's a building project, and there isn't now. The States had early advantage because they had lots of space and reasonable power availability, and probably a slightly less regulated environment for building in. That's all changing. And the supply chain issue affects everybody. If you want a major transformer for your data center, it's about a 4-year lead time. Yeah. If you want to apply to go on to most national grids, it's anywhere from 5 to 9 years, depending on the country you're in. So what we're seeing is a lot of data centers looking at what they call behind the grid power.
Yeah.
In the States, we've even seen them reprovisioning 3 Mile Island, the atomic power station that got into trouble years ago. I can't remember whether it was Google or Amazon or Microsoft Azure, but one of them has basically opened up, is planning to open up 3 Mile Island.
Oh, okay.
So that they have their own source of power away from the grid. And that is a trend you're going to see more and more of people. They call it behind the grid. Well, behind the grid is sort of battery backup to the grid capability, but more and more people will be going off grid.
Yeah. So Richard, can you see the screen? Here's the chat. We're seeing, I think, as Paul is speaking, I think the UK ahead of the Germany. I think they have 508 now, I believe.
Well, the one you're looking at there, I reckon, is older than the one that the data center map is real time.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So I mean, and this was a bit of Anglo-German rivalry. I just smiled when I saw that in the latest data center map, the UK had overtaken Germany. One up to the grid.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So, all right, let's
sorry to interrupt you, but we have a new guest on our cloud state of play. The first ever live stream of the cloud state of play. We have a new guest, and you have to introduce our next guest, Richard.
Yes. So it's a pleasure to have Cheryl Hung back on again. Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Nice to see you all again.
Hey, Cheryl, how you doing?
Hi,
Cheryl.
We've got everything sorted here, even the special effects and the sound effects. So.
I love it. That's great.
Excellent. How you doing? You good?
Yeah, everything is great. I'm very excited by this new live stream format that you guys are doing. Congratulations on the launch.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's we thought we'll see how much we can screw up on the first one and kind of take stock of whether we should do it again or not and go back.
Okay, so we're like setting expectations.
We are. Yes, we are indeed. Yeah, indeed. Excellent. Okay, so how you been? How's things going for you?
Yeah, everything's great. Let me give a little intro to myself for maybe the folks at home. So my name is Cheryl. I'm an ex-software engineer, so ex-Google, ex-Apple. And now I run a developer community called Cloud Native London, which I've been doing for 9 years, in fact. We've just over 10,000 members now. So my interests are cloud, data, AI, and also building up the community, encouraging more people to contribute towards open source, building up the London ecosystem of startups. So those kind of topics.
Great.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right. Well, you're just in time for our second topic. So we're moving on. So we've had a little chat about the data centers, kind of where they are and things like that. So folks, if you want to get an idea a little bit more of kind of what's out there, we've dropped all the links in the comments, but also we will include them in the description at some point. But yeah, let's move on to our second topic. So the second topic was from Aviatrix. So they put out a post which was around Anthropic's Mythos, which was launched or came out, at least in the news, wasn't really launched, but it was announced kind of last week. Mythos is their new model, and even the Anthropic guys seem to be scared of it in terms of how good it is. So it's found apparently there are hundreds or thousands of unpatched 0-day exploits, and Aviatrix put out a post around sort of how you can sort of deal with that, and also actually I thought they kind of set a good expectation in terms of what to expect when maybe somebody discovers an exploit, a 0-day exploit or something like that as well. It's not actually that easy to kind of maybe go and take advantage of that, but clearly people do manage to do that as well. But yeah, I don't know if you guys, Cheryl, I don't know if you had a chance to have a look at it. I shared some kind of thoughts with you prior to the live stream today. But yeah, what were your thoughts about, and what were your thoughts about Anthropic's Mythos as well?
Well, so I took a look at this article that you shared, Richard, and first of all, I appreciate the fact that this blog post empathizes with, I think, the panic that a lot of us felt when we first read this, right? Because the headlines were a little bit scary. It was a little bit like AI is going to come and take over everything, and everything's going to fall down. And once you get past that initial panic, then get to the question of like, hold on, let's all take stock. Let's not panic. The world is not falling down. And let's think about the fact that, yeah, this is an acceleration of what has happened before, but we also have strategies in place that, yeah, we need to accelerate. We need to be better at designing our architectures and thinking about how to contain the blast radius. But these are not new topics, right? Yeah. Anybody who's worked in security has already spent a lot of time thinking about this. So that was my takeaway from it, I guess. The world is not falling down. What about you? I mean, maybe Paul, what did you think?
Well, I mean, the first thing to say is that you probably missed my introduction. So I'm not particularly technical. I spent most of my 40 odd years in IT in marketing and turned sort of poacher. I turned gamekeeper when I went to be an IT analyst much later in my life, and I'm sort of retired, semi-retired. So I'm not particularly technical.
So modest, I tell you.
But what intrigued me was this idea. I mean, you just talked about it, Joe. Was the blast radius? I got involved with the Unisys because I used to work for Unisys for a long time with their zero gap security program many years ago. And obviously the focus, and as it comes out of Aviatrix, the focus was always, how do you get it to a point that you don't trust nobody until you've got them fully credentialed and know, once they're inside, they're trusted. And I don't think I'd ever moved on from that. So I was quite shocked by what was coming out. And then, but the more I thought about it, I thought, that blast radius and how do I stop that getting out and spreading seemed to be a much more maintainable position than trying to ensure that because the thing that got me, I hadn't really realized was that, in a CI/CD pipeline, if you're already infected with one of these things in there, it's sort of got free reign to do what it wants. The bad actor, if you like, has got in. It's automated. Whereas, I think I came from a world where it's a case of how do you ensure the bad people keep out? Well, the bad people are now bots, so you're going to have to do something slightly different. So from my perspective, it was, got to the end of it and thought about it and thought, okay, don't panic, just like you did. It was like, okay, there's ways in which you can contain this.
Yeah, I think we're having, maybe once a year these kind of panics. So last year was DeepSeek, this year's kind of Mythos, but it's still early days, so we'll see what happens to the rest of the year. I'm just interested in a few of the quotes and kind of maybe come back to you, Cheryl. So they're kind of talking about this, sort of containment architecture. So rather than kind of they're talking about the tools that we've had in cybersecurity stuff have kind of been about, monitoring and then kind of, detection, are sort of positioned in that way. It's kind of a detection first sort of architecture, whereas they're talking more about the sort of the containment era, or the sort of containment architecture.
I guess I'm curious to know sort of what security teams are doing one and not the other. I feel like a lot of the talks and articles and things that I've read about it in, sufficiently mature organizations are going to be looking at both sides of this, right? You wouldn't do one and not the other is sort of my first impression on this. And perhaps, if people are watching and want to comment otherwise, I would be curious to hear that as well. But as Paul said, there are things that we can do that are not just sit back and let the flood come in, because we already know that things have moved on, things have changed from how they were done before, and it's just a natural evolution into the next phase.
Yeah, so they're kind of saying, cybersecurity industry spent 15 years building increasingly sophisticated, this is a quote, detection tools designed to answer one question: is something bad happening?
I disagree with that, though. No,
keep
going. Sorry, but I'll come back to it.
Yeah, and then they're saying, but the right question is, or should be, if something bad is already running, what can it reach and what can it send? End quote.
Right. So that to me is the latter half of it, right? Like, I think there's a lot more focus now, as Paul mentioned, the CVEs, right? Like, there are companies out there where the whole goal is to give you very minimal, very hardened images that have as few CVs as possible. And once they're publicly revealed, then they get patched and you pull and you use the latest images. So the idea is, instead of everybody having to monitor, tons of different databases and keep track of all the CVEs, the idea is like one company provides this. And there's more than one company that offers this kind of service. So to me, that's why I said, Richard, I think I disagree a little bit that the cybersecurity is only focused on detection of what's already happening, because I don't think that's true.
Yeah. So let me. So they're kind of defining the containment era. They're saying is the containment era is defined. They're going to quoting is defined by organizations that have moved from choke point security, which is centralized inspection at critical points, to communication governance. And they define that by saying a posture where every workload can only be reached, or can only reach what it has explicit permission to reach, and everything outside that is denied by default at the network layer. Now, to me, this kind of sounds like zero trust. But I kind of at the network layer, where obviously Aviatrix, works. They're kind of at the network security and monitoring sort of layer. What's kind of your take on that, Paul? What do you think?
I think the thing from my perspective is this is as much about a cultural shift that businesses need to take around how they manage their security. One of the things, drums I keep banging on, is getting people to explain to senior management, and to the board of directors, if you like, what's at risk and what are the mitigations? And clearly, one of the things I quite liked about the containment issue is you can sort of start to say, here's the mitigation for this, because with the best will in the world, somebody is always going to break through the defenses. It's never going to happen routine, and we've seen it where companies thought that they couldn't be broken, and of course were. So as much as anything else, I just see this as another, and back to Cheryl's point, this is something that's going on. But the worry I have is that for many organizations, if you like, who are quite young in the sense of their move from legacy applications, monolithic architectures into the cloud, haven't quite grasped this, this complexity that's going on. And also we're now, seeing with the various tools, everybody's gone mad for Claude 4.6 in terms of its ability to, from a coding perspective. You're sort of letting loose another whole group of people onto this who don't understand it. And I'm sure at various other points in our talk today, we'll come back to the need for decent architectural planning. And that sometimes I think we've forgotten that. EA got a bad name, so everybody stopped doing it. Well, that's an overstatement, but I think it got relegated, and it shouldn't have been relegated.
Yeah, Cheryl, briefly.
Yeah. Well, so first off, I have not heard this described as containment architecture before. I guess it makes sense, but I don't know if that's a new label that Aviatrix has come up with, or if I've just missed this particular naming. But secondly, what does this have? This doesn't have anything specifically to do with Anthropic's Mythos, right? Whether that existed or not, we would still be doing the same thing of controlling things at the network layer, controlling what workloads can talk to what and in what format and what they can request. And I don't disagree with it, I guess.
No, I think they just picked it up because it's occasional. That's kind of, Mythos just happened to be sort of,
it's in the news.
The latest topic, and they
Okay, so Richard or Paul or Sam, have you heard of this containment architecture term before?
No, it's new to me.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's not a. It's not kind of. I can see where Aviatrix is coming from, because that they are, like I said, in that sort of network security and monitoring sort of space. That's really where Aviatrix sort of operates. And Paul and I have kind of gone back and forth on, that space being just so underserved. It's just so underrated and underserved, I think, especially in that cloud environment. Maybe less so in sort of the hybrid and certainly the data center. There's lots of kind of monitoring tools from likes of Cisco and others. But in that sort of cloud environment, it just doesn't seem to be. We again, it goes back to kind of our sort of ball of mud discussion of kind of everything from the ground up type of design and architecture. But I've not necessarily heard of it specifically. I guess it's something that they're maybe putting out as the sort of the containment sort of era, containment architecture. But for me, what they're saying about kind of everything kind of being confined either into a network segment or a profile or whatever you want to call it, and that job normally would be a kind of a zero trust architecture type of approach if you look at it generally speaking. And if you're doing that, or if that's kind of what they're referring to, that's normally done at the sort of layer 6 or 7 of the model, not in the sort of the networking layer 3 of the model. And maybe they're kind of trying to bring that sort of zero trust down to the layer 3. I don't know. I think the only thing I didn't get from the articles, so what do we do now, Aviatrix? Because they're not even saying, and we do this, by the way, and this is a solution in our product. They're not even kind of advertising it that way. They've kind of set out the stall, but not kind of gone into the into the details of it, unfortunately. But still, a thought-provoking post and article. I think it's interesting. It's, like I said, very much occasional, because it's based on sort of the headlines that we picked up the week before around Anthropic's Mythos as well.
So Richard, we have an interruption. Sorry for the interruption. Right. But we have a wonderful guest.
Well, we just keep on having more guests. Oh dear.
Absolutely.
What can we do?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, let's have him on.
Allow me to join my wonderful friend, our collective friend from Octopus Deploy, Steve Fenton. You're now on the screen. Hello.
Hey. Hello, Steve. Welcome.
How's it going,
Welcome. How are you
everyone?
doing? Good. How are you? We've been joking. We've even got the sound effects as well going. So you get everything on this live stream.
We are slowly but getting more professional these days.
Slowly. Very slowly. Very slowly. How you doing, Steve? How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. I've been listening into the conversation so far and enjoying the discussion topics. And I had a quick look on the map to see if I had data centers near me. I was like, I'm pretty clear down here.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So no extra radiation or anything like that going on.
No, peaceful countryside here.
Your lights suddenly don't go dim when the new AI training model comes online.
Yeah, that's right. Every time I do a web search, the lights flicker. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time it should be every time you do a ChatGPT query now, the lights flicker. Surely.
So Richard and I
sorry. Let's just have a quick. Steve, just a quick intro to you and Octopus Deploy as well, please.
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Steve. I work at Octopus Deploy. We are a CD tool that just make deployments super reliable, super repeatable. Get rid of all of that painful stuff that happens around deployments, all of that stress. Our job is to remove all of that anxiety and make people joyful, even to the extent where they might even deploy on a Friday. What a crime. I am part of the CNCF community, working on the platform engineering working groups there. And I'm a CD Foundation governing board member. But most of my time is spent hanging around people who do research. So like the folks at Dora with their research, and Dr. Charlotte Fleming, who's doing some cool research in AI, platform engineering, continuous delivery, all of those kinds of things. So I'm a real research nerd, and I love joining in on those kind of curious explorations.
Fantastic. All right. Well, you're just in time for our third topic, so appreciate you jumping on. So let's move on to that. So the third topic was AI agent governance gap, what CISOs need to know. Now, this is actually based on a report. I think it's a relatively brief report from the Cloud Security Alliance. And the area that I'm kind of wanted to focus on was quite specific, because I've kind of been really advocating for this for quite some time. And I'm thankfully seeing lots of evidence that it's actually coming to fruition. Not exactly in the kind of way I want it to be, but hey, you can't have 100% of everything, right? But it's cool to be able to see it. And that point was on page 6 of their report, where they talk about the identity and authorization gap. So let me just quote you from that, because this is quite relevant. It says, and quotes, one of the most immediately exploitable dimensions of the agentic governance shortfall is the failure of the enterprise identity infrastructure to account for non-human principles operating at scale. AI agents present a novel identity challenge. They act on behalf of users, hold credentials, make authorization decisions in real time, and may spawn sub-agents as well, end quote. So this whole space for me, just generally speaking, what I've been advocating for is some kind of a AI agent sort of registry, something that actually, agents, just like in sort of cloud native land, where we, all apps and services kind of register themselves with the service registry, and then that allows for the communication, and then you have your secrets manager to kind of give you the keys and whatever to get everything talking. It'd be really good if we could have an AI agent registry, especially if you're going to kind of run these things in the enterprise. So I'm glad to see that the Cloud Security Alliance is kind of picking up on that these things do need identities. They need to be included kind of in the sort of operations and production environments, and need to have that kind of usual authentication, authorization type of approach as well. Steve, what was kind of your impression on just the overall report, maybe, and do you agree with that point?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting problem because we've traditionally used user accounts, and then we've sometimes created service accounts, which are like, they kind of live for a long time, and you're like, I want this thing to be able to talk to this thing. I actually think what we really want for these agents are short-lived accounts that are granted very specific permissions. So we don't kind of just have a general. The temptation is going to be to create like a service account for AI, and then as you do things with it, it's going to accumulate more permissions that then it keeps forever once it's got them the first time, and it's just going to become like I feel like I'm getting more worried about that. So if we could create something much more short-lived and that has the permissions it needs right now, and almost like reverts to nothing until you want to kind of assign it new tasks, a little bit like. I know Microsoft did this in their cloud, where instead of you having admin accounts, you'd request temporary elevation, and then someone would have permissions to grant you that temporary elevation. You could do the thing you needed, and then you kind of like bump back down to just a normal user again. And it just reduces that window where something nasty can happen.
Yeah. Cheryl, do you agree with kind of that we need this sort of kind of a registry of some kind, something that, looks after all the agents that we're going to run in production, does all the usual authentication, authorization type of stuff, and as Steve said, kind of makes it a little bit more easier for them to kind of go off and do their job.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, Richard, have spoken a little bit about this AI agent registry idea before, but I really like Steve's point that actually these are probably going to be short-lived. Spin them up with exactly the permissions that they need, and then after that, cut them off. Because I think I did some work with a custom identity account management startup last year, and their point was, if you imagine that you have like 10 million customers at the moment with user accounts, in the future, maybe, this is going to scale. Like, imagine all of them had 5 or 6 agents running on their behalf, and then suddenly it scales to 60 million or 100 million, but then those things die, are no longer useful. So now, instead of your sort of database, user account database looking relatively fixed and growing slowly, you're going to have one that sort of, wildly changes depending on what number of users are using AI agents to do what. So I think that's the real change that we're going to see. And then you have to have the traceability back so that you have each of those AI agents connects to a human. And that's where the registry bit comes in.
Paul, what's your take?
The question I've got thinking about this, and Cheryl just sort of said this sort of scale that's coming, is have we got the people and the systems that can design and maintain these environments? Because as you say, the scale will go through the roof, and the speed of change, or because you're going to have to automate the automation of the bots, as it were. So I'm looking at this moving of skill sets within IT organizations and within our technical environment generally, into much more of this sort of architectural, how do I manage this environment, rather than just the doing. And my fear is that we're going to be behind that curve all the time, trying to get up to speed with the right number of people who can actually manage that. That would be because I think everything that you and Steve have said is spot on. It's just our ability. Stop AI running away with it, or stop, or businesses allowing AI to run away with it, because that's where it comes. I come back to this sort of, risk management and risk mitigation that business boards need to get on board and understand what the hell's going on and put the resources behind it that's necessary. But have we got the skills to do it broadly enough, or are there going to be a small number of service providers? I mean, one thing, will there be some small, some huge service providers who'll manage this for everybody, and that just brings a different level of risk to to the way the board thinks. So I think we're all, it's one where I got slightly spooked. I think I didn't get so spooked by the one about Mythos. I was going to call it Mithras. No, I'm getting my Greek mythology wrong way around. So I was sort of more spooked by this one, and maybe I've seen too many science fiction films where the bots take over. You think, okay, but that's my concern. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's that we've got the scale and the skills to be able to do that fast enough to not let I say bad actors, just the lazy people let it past, and that worries me.
I've been walking around quoting the Book of Revelation 6:10 actually specifically, where it says, and I've kind of slightly modified it and said just kind of I just thought I'll put this out, and it says and they cried out with a loud voice saying, "How long, O Lord, until you make them give us an AI agents registry?" So
wow.
thank you. But my dream is coming true, because IBM also put this up in a chart as well. So I will share that on the in the comments as well, because they were talking about AI ops and other things. But in the chart that they put up, they have an agents registry, which is quite cool. Adding to that, Microsoft have the Agent Governance Toolkit. Now that talks about a registry as well, which is great. And then somebody was talking about AI guardrails, a guardrail layer, or several layers for guardrails around AI and AI agents as well. So that goes into, I think, about 4 layers or so, and that talks about a system layer, which is kind of the technology, a process layer, which talks about workflows, operating model, which is the people and the culture, and the governance layer, which is the kind of the control and oversight as well. So there's a ton of these out there as well. Yeah, thank you, Saim. I think that's the IBM one. So if you look at that chart that it's on that particular post, it actually does have a agent registry on there, which is quite cool. It's in the middle white box on the left, I think. Yeah, there you go. So I think this kind of idea is coming about. I think people are getting to my way of thinking at last, but it's taking some time, and we'll see how we get on. Now, unfortunately, we have to press on with the next topic. So if people have any other questions, by all means, put them in the comments. But we'll move on to the next topic. Saim, why don't you do the intro for the next topic?
Oh, thank you very much, Richard. And this one, how do we say it in France? I think bonjour Linux. Is it a good way to say this, Richard? France says goodbye to Windows and hello Linux. So,
indeed.
And these topics, Richard, I think we speak about a lot in some of the cloud native wisdom episode last year as well, and we also, I think, including some of the topic in some of the cloud therapists, some of the previous episode as well. So I think even the Windows and Linux conversation is kind of it becoming on a point like where the Windows is saying we love Linux as well, just because of all of the container images.
Yeah, well, Microsoft loves everything as long as it kind of makes sense to their business, right? So, of course. No, so yeah, so this one is kind of just takes us out a little bit, because a lot of these types of sort of migrations that are done by, councils or particular governments or something, they tend to focus a lot more, and Paul and I think have probably tackled these in previous episodes of Class State to Play, but they tend to focus a lot more kind of on the client side. So it's, things like turfing out Microsoft Office, and bringing in LibreOffice or something like that, or taking out, sort of Exchange and Outlook potentially, and bringing in, sort of Gmail or something or something like that, or something, kind of open source based. So clearly this is kind of, seems to be a cyclic thing, because every few years we get one of these sort of headlines of somebody doing it. And I will quote one, if we'll get a chance, I will quote one that happened last time around. That didn't seem to go very well for that particular city in Germany, but we'll come back to that. And then obviously the usual, I don't know if you've obviously heard these, but the usual kind of, jokes about this as being the year of Linux on the desktop sort of, makes it around. I'm sure, Steve, you've heard about it, and you kind of, seen a few of those. But yeah, interesting thoughts on that. Cheryl, what was your take on this? Are they kind of barking up the wrong tree when it comes to just focusing on end user tools and stuff like that, and still leaving the back end kind of running, Windows Server and what have you?
Well, okay, so to give my own personal bias, right? Like, I've worked for the Linux Foundation. I am in many ways an idealist about open source and generally believe it's a good thing for the industry as a whole. But from a corporate perspective, I have been an ecosystem builder, right? Like, I've seen how the success of new technologies, not new necessarily, but new to an organization, does not rely so much on the platform or the base technology itself as this ecosystem of tools and processes and how the organization functions and how it interacts with its partners. Those are much more critical and much more difficult to change. They're very sticky, and for a government to change all of those is a really heavy lift, right? Changing the Linux desktop itself, that's nice. How do you change everything else? How do you change the processes of the organization around it? And that will be the difficult bit. And, I think Microsoft has, it is not just pure evil, in the way that we used to characterize it, against versus open source in the past. But I do believe that it's going to be a much more difficult and long and drawn out process. And there's going to be a lot more, Windows leftover stuff that's hanging on for decades and decades and decades. But all of that said, I'm an idealist, and I think open source is a good thing. And if this works out, I will be very happy about it. Yeah.
So, Paul, you and I think went kind of discussed this, I think, in a email exchange. But again, notice that it kind of, skirting around the edges again with client sort of apps and things like that they're going to be, looking to replace. There's nothing. I don't think the article really mentioned anything around sort of the backend systems changing. So if they're running Exchange, they're going to probably stay on Exchange. If they're running SQL Server, potentially they will stay there. What's your kind of take on it?
Well, it's gained more momentum and certainly more newsworthy now because of the geopolitical situation. And particularly, the French are usually first on that bandwagon when it comes to having a pop at the Americans. That tends to be what happens. The other thing that strikes me about this, quite apart from the fact that public sector is just not as dynamic as most, private enterprises. It's a fact of life. I've worked in the National Health Service in the UK, and that drives you absolutely nuts with the way they handle their technology. So I think there's a general challenge of how quickly will they be able to do that. And we're seeing through to 2030. I don't think they'll get there that fast. And there's my other reason, and if you like, you can look at the German city that you talked about was a failure. However, if you look at China, in the public sector in China, they've moved into that sort of open systems world because they not only is, it's the French are trying to go top down in a Western economy. The Chinese were going top down in a fairly tightly controlled environment. So I think there's those sort of inertia things that will come in. And we are, everybody will have a slightly different idea. So about how it's going to work and how it would be, and trying to get it, the French and the British and the Germans and the Dutch and everybody else to go down the same route will be very, very difficult. And I just think, back to Joel's point, as a sales and marketing guy, we always used to say, people will only change when the pain of doing nothing is greater than the pain of of doing something, and that's why I wonder, if you're making this a political statement, why on earth are you doing it? Because actually it will cost you a lot more money to get through this, and you haven't got a definite outcome because it's just too bloody difficult. Excuse my French.
Yeah. So what's your take on it? Is this something that, is it just kind of because of the, recent push towards sovereignty and stuff like that, or is it kind of a genuine cost-saving sort of exercise here?
I don't think there's any cost saving to be had. I'm going to be honest about that. I think the process of moving it will take a very long time to recover everything that they spend moving. I think the sovereignty issue is the one that's pushing this. I think it's one of those things, right? As long as everything is ticking along fine, this never would have come up. But now all of these questions have come up about whether infrastructure that's in Europe is even sovereign, because people have indicated that maybe they would allow that to be looked at if the appropriate signed document arrived saying that they have to give access. And so it is a strange situation to be in where many nations in Europe effectively are sharing their documents with the US government without deliberately doing that, right? That's the situation which they're concerned about. And that might not have been such a big issue like a few years back as it is today. In terms of Linux on the desktop, I had a Windows 10 machine that was not going to get upgraded. It couldn't run Windows 11. And so for the first time in my whole life, I installed Linux on my laptop, which is this one here. I stuck Linux on here and I was like, I'll try it. It's going to be painful. I'm not going to understand how anything works. But to be honest, you don't know, right? The experience is so similar on, I've got Ubuntu on here. There are lots of other options. I haven't really noticed anything that I can't do. I can run all the same things on there. I can get stuff done. But when it comes to government, this is where you start finding that they're still using Internet Explorer 11 because they've got a app that uses ActiveX and it doesn't run in any other browser. And, you have all of these issues that they're going to keep stepping on rakes throughout the whole process as they find all of these things that just don't work. And it's going to be like, well, now we need to rewrite another huge section of our estate. And then they'll go onto the servers and they'll be like, what stuff have we got that can run on Linux and what stuff needs to be rewritten, and it's going to keep expanding and expanding. And the size of it is going to be immense. So I've kind of done this inside of a private company with a smaller state of stuff. And it was hard work. So I'm imagining what that must be like when you look at all of the different departments of government, healthcare, everything is got their own apps. And it's just, the list is going to be long. So I think it needs to be broken down into really tiny steps if they're ever going to do it successfully. They'll have to say, if we just try a Linux desktop, what apps can we not run in each department, right? They just have to try it. And then that will be their target of where to start. But yeah, it has to be a long-term strategy. It's not going to happen in 2027. It's going to happen over a decade or more.
Yeah, because I think they do mention that. I think if I look at the entry, it said, I think by autumn of this year, each ministry, including subordinate authorities, must present their own roadmap. So okay, but when does that when does that mean in terms of the replacement, right? When is it going to happen? So each of them will have their own roadmaps. And again, kind of this is merely just roadmaps, not actual, replacements. And I think I'm not sure if the article, I can't remember because I read it some time ago now, but I took some notes, and I don't know if it was kind of mistaking or mixing, kind of conflating the sort of, this kind of whole digital sovereignty thing and kind of, being sovereign and so on, with actual replacement of something. Actually, taking MS Office out and then bringing in, let's say, LibreOffice or something like that. So again, there seemed to be kind of a little bit of a mixture in terms of the wording I think that was used for that. Paul, do you know which German city it was that to do this?
I thought you did, and you were just trying to be gentle with the Germans. It was Munich.
It was Munich, yes. So the project was called Limex project, I think, which started in 2004 with the goal of replacing Windows on city desktops with a Linux-based system. And by 2012, most of the migration had been completed. But then in 2017, the City Council voted to abandon the project and return to Microsoft products by 2020. Citing operational issues and various other things.
Did you also realize at the time that Microsoft moved its European headquarters to Munich?
Yes, that was an interesting coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, every action has a reaction, and quite often when you're playing with the really big boys out there, they'll find ways of just making it difficult particularly for politicians.
That
was an interesting one. When I saw that Microsoft had done that, I thought it was interesting. I mean, the other intriguing one was that they brought up was South Korea, which again is going down that same sort of route. It's taken them a long time and they've not finished it, but they seem to be quite focused and determined on getting it to work, but it's behind schedule. Well, what a surprise. It's that sort of, whereas I'm not sure that in a Western democracy, just from a cultural perspective, we will be quite as focused as maybe, the Chinese or the Koreans. I just think it's, think about my own brain. I get distracted far too easily by the next big thing, and I think, in any organization I've worked in, and I'm sure you have as well, we always used to say if you had a room of 10 people in trying to make a decision, you've got 11 decisions. It's our culture. It really is. It's going to find that really difficult to beat that.
And I think that some of the sort of early arguments were around sort of, the document format. So they obviously kind of, beat Microsoft into kind of, supporting ODF and open document format and things like that. So Cheryl, have you seen kind of any focus on, where this sort of thing kind of leads to? Is this kind of commonplace these days, or do we still kind of just see this sort of sporadic, sort of odd spike of this city or, government entity or something decides to do this? What's kind of your take on that?
Well, I think between us, we've sort of already named all of the examples, and there aren't that many of them. But something that I thought that I had sort of listening to Steve mention, like, digital sovereignty is the driver behind this. And Paul, you were saying about the pain of changing versus not changing, right? It strikes me that actually maybe they should have done the opposite to Richard, what you said, and focused on the back end and what they can change on the servers and just leave the user experience alone, because actually maybe that's what matters more, right? That the data is all controlled within Europe on Linux, and we as techies are more comfortable with changing stuff around than the average end user is, who is just like, I've been running with Microsoft Office for 40 years and I know what I know and I don't want to change ever. It's going to be far more difficult to make them change their behavior than it is to encourage the tech teams behind it to move to new infrastructure.
Yeah, indeed.
I would also add to this
that
nothing says the project is going to fail more than one which is going to spend most of a year doing the first part of planning. Right. If the planning is taking that long, the actual project is doomed. It cannot succeed. So the bigger the project is, the more likely it will trip.
I don't know. Some of my local politics seems to take a year or more to plan, never mind national governments.
I think we all hope that the next people who get voted in will have to do the implementation. That's the goal. Like, plan it long enough that we have retired and the new generation of politicians has to deal with it.
I will give you a little phrase that I used to hear in major meetings inside the NHS, which was if they had a big problem they were trying to solve, the first thing they did was to create a task and finish group. And that makes your blood run cold, because the finish of the task, you end up with another task and finish group afterwards. They never finish. It's really, and I got to the point where anybody said it in a meeting and I would, literally not quite lose the rag. I'm not that sort of person, but you make it very clear that all they're doing is kicking the can down the road.
Yeah.
And that background noise we can hear is an awful lot of cans being kicked down a lot of roads.
Yes, I mean, just a final quote on that. I think that it said, digital sovereignty is a strategic necessity. Yes, a sovereignty is, but that's kind of not really the same thing as replacing entire software stacks. Even the EU, I think, agrees with that, with their SEAL levels, the SEAL levels that they've produced around digital sovereignty. And those only focus really on core sovereignty requirements, so your data and operations and things like that. But that's not necessarily avoiding vendor lock-in. And I did see, I can't remember if it was in this post, in the comments of this post or some other post, because there's some other ones that I've picked up on as well. And there was this kind of, the discussion kind of moved away a little bit from all this kind of office stuff and what have you to that. Well, is it actually sovereignty that we're trying to do here, or is it kind of vendor lock-in, or both, or or do both mean the same thing, and so on? So that it just seems to be a little bit, this kind of new discussion of bringing in digital sovereignty is kind of a little bit more, maybe fogging this whole sort of, making it a little bit more nebulous, this sort of whole area. But in the past, yeah, it was kind of definitely, we want to get rid of MS Office, we want to get rid of Windows, whatever version, and we bring in Linux for that, and bring in something like LibreOffice or something to run for the office productivity stuff. I think things were a lot simpler back then, but there you go. All right, so Cheryl, I think you're kind of, I think, going to be leaving us, unfortunately. So
I am at time.
sad
Yeah.
to see that, but
thank you very much for the conversation. Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing people again next time.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks very much for your time.
Bye.
All right. Thank you. Excellent. All right. So, guys, let's move on. I think we're still on time, which is great. This is unbelievable, but there you go. We're doing well. Let's move on to the fifth topic, which is why is the CNCF shaping AI to fit its purpose? So this is based on an article which came out, I think, in the News Stack relatively recently, something subsequent to the KubeCon event in Amsterdam. And it was an interview with Jonathan Bryce, I think is he's exec something at the CNCF or the Linux Foundation. And he was talking about kind of some of the initiatives, the sort of AI conformance initiative or framework that they're working on to sort of really fit AI into that sort of Kubernetes space. Now, I've got a lot of bones to pick on this, but I want to kind of, conscious of time, so I won't kind of dwell on them too much. But my concern has been, and this is sort of an ongoing concern, is that the CNCF is trying to, fit AI into its kind of space. And I don't understand why they're doing that, because AI has been, it's operated and worked just fine on its own without Kubernetes, without kind of, all these layers and stacks of, clusters and, or I should say things like service, service microservices and service mesh, and all this extra stuff that really is something like Kubernetes as an operating sort of environment that an orchestrator kind of really brings in. So an HPC is happiest when it's running kind of as close to the bare metal as possible, because after all, it's an HPC workload. That's essentially what AI is. It's an HPC workload. So if we kind of look at that and then see some of the complexity that the CNCF kind of brings in with something like Kubernetes, while still acknowledging that if you were to do it that way with Kubernetes, yes, you will get scalability. You'll get that kind of ability to, orchestrate and make, sort of the AI workloads. Whether there's training or inference, not really relevant, but you can do it, and you can do a lot better job, I guess, with something like Kubernetes as opposed to maybe Terraform and Slurm or some of the other sort of orchestrators that you get in the HPC world. But Steve, what's your take on this? I don't know if you had a chance to look at the article on the new stack, but yeah, I'd like to kind of get your view on it.
This is super interesting. Kudos to Jennifer Riggins, who did this interview and created the article. Always enjoy reading her stuff on the new stack and on Lead Dev. I think there's a little bit of existential dread coming from a lot of different places. So in order to combat that, I think everyone is having to position what they do against AI because they're worried that that's where all the money's going to be. So it's not just the question of AI running on Kubernetes. The platform engineering, like there's loads of stuff coming out from the platform engineering world where people are saying, well, platform engineering is where an organization's AI is going to land, and they're going to have to deal with it all. But when I speak to platform engineering teams, none of them are doing that. None of them are in that space. They're not, unless it's a company that are specializing, and so they are running AI workloads. The AI isn't actually embedded in platforms, and the platform teams aren't bringing it into the organization at this stage in terms of in percentages. And I kind of feel that people are maybe a bit scared about not being as relevant, but I'm not sure they should be that worried, because even if the AI training isn't done on Kubernetes, and even if the AI inference isn't done on Kubernetes, the apps that people build with it will run on Kubernetes. So it's not really an existential threat, I don't think, to the technology, but it's almost impossible not to like position yourself against AI, because it's such a giant thing that you kind of have to say, this is how it's relevant to us, or you look like you don't know what's going on. So I feel there's an element of that. It's such a big beast in terms of what is everyone talking about right now. And it's like, I'd love it to be about a new language feature that someone's bringing out. That would be kind of cool, but it's not, it's AI.
Yeah. And I think, I remember I was at the SUCon, the State of OpenCon 2024, which was early, I think it was like February or something that year. And there was a huge panic in the corridors of that event from people who didn't know what AI was. There was that kind of, they were coming off the back of that whole sort of ChatGPT can now write code, and some of the sacred cows of that sort of development world, like Stack Overflow, we're seeing a complete slump in terms of their sort of visits and utilization and downloads and whatever, versus ChatGPT kind of growing sort of astronomically. So there was a lot of panic around that time, and I don't know whether the CNCF has kind of pushed a little bit too far or too hard on kind of trying to fit sort of AI into that. You've got to have to get you into that Kubernetes mold, sort of, and shape you in that way. Paul, what's kind of your what's your take on this? What's your view?
Well, something Steve said that I don't think I considered, because my first thought was, well, I get the fact that you don't need Kubernetes for training, but I was thinking more and more of the inferencing side where it might be more relevant. But it was you're saying that actually it's the apps that people develop is where it will, and I think that's absolutely spot on. And we sort of use inferencing as a general term for anything that isn't training, and of course it's going to be very, very different. Whether you're, in your car with your, with your AI scanning the road in front of you and inferencing like mad, to big applications that have got AI inferencing embedded in what they do, whether it's SaaS, or it's a SaaS application and one of the big ERPs. We're seeing virtually every ERP vendor trying, again, slightly panicking and sort of leveraging, levering AI into it. But again, and Steve, we've seen the same as you in the sense that there's very few enterprise and certainly the medium sized and smaller enterprises are nowhere near doing any of this stuff yet. They've just about got a fairly dumb chatbot going, and they're a long way from the agentic AI and the inferencing sort of routine. So that was, but from a technology point of view, I didn't have any comment at all, because you and I kick around ideas about VMs and containers and bare metal and what's the best to run it. And of course, I get lost in the weeds at that point. So, but certainly from a point of view of implementation out there, it feels some way off.
Yeah. I mean, I would have, I would have pressed Jonathan Bryce a little bit more, to be honest with you. I think the interview was a little bit. I mean, I appreciate this kind of, it was done at the conference, so it was quite rushed, because there was a video, I think, accompanying the post as well. But yeah, I mean, what he was saying just came off the press release, really, from this AI conformance thing that the CNCF has put out, and it's an interesting choice of words, choosing conformance, which means compliance with standards, rules, and and laws and things like that, and then compliance itself as a action or a fact of complying with the wish or the command of something or somebody. So I don't know if it's a Freudian slip as far as the CNCF is concerned, in terms of how they're trying to really do this.
They almost moving into ISO territory, didn't they?
Sorry, say that again?
It was almost as if they were moving into ISO territory. They're moving away from the sort of practical, this is what we need to do, into let's have a standard. And you think, hold on a minute, that's a very different kettle of fish they're talking about. So
and this, I think this was kind of my my concern about it. And it, like I said, it harks back to that sort of the CNCF trying to remain relevant within this sort of new space. As we said, AI is an HPC workload. HPC's kind of got on with stuff, without all this whole sort of cloud native stack. Sure, it's used open source, and it still does. And if you look at kind of the 7 or 8 layers of the HPC in terms of how it does things, there's a lot of detail there, and lots of open source tools. But it was interesting to kind of just look at that in a little bit more detail and just kind of see what the content would be. Steve, I'll give you the last word if there's anything else you want to add.
No, just I think it's interesting to use a word like conformance at this stage, when I don't think I've seen a stable plan of how we're using AI for 3 months consecutive, right? For the last 2 years, it's moving rapidly forward. The way we use it, the ability of the models that the big providers are presenting people, everything's moving on. And I kind of think, in a way, AI just needs to have a lot of leash at the moment for us to work out what it can do and where there does potentially need to be control. So yeah, I think it's too early at the moment to say here's a standard for how we should do AI when it's evolving and emerging right now. It's too soon. Yeah,
and I mean, I guess we'll see how that goes. And you're right; it's a moving target, right? That's kind of the I think the issue that we're seeing really at the moment. Now, there was a couple of other sub kind of posts as well that came out. Let me just see if I can actually find those here, because those were quite interesting. And I think initially for me anyway, they kind of muddied the waters a little bit, because they were talking about, there was one post, I'll try and share this with you guys when I get a chance, but there was one which was talking about a Kubernetes blueprint for LLM inference. And then the other one was talking about Kubernetes native patterns for AI at scale. So 2 posts, and these were actually, ironically, again, New Stack posts as well. And I kind of put them through the ChatGPT sort of machine, and it actually stacked them quite well. It kind of said the conformance thing is kind of the framework initiative, if you like, and then the patterns is kind of trying to identify how you'd go about doing it, and then the LLM, the blueprint one, is actually kind of your cookbook, if you like. If you're actually going to do this, this is kind of how you could potentially go about doing it. So my question was kind of, hang on, there's a lot of documentation and things like that. So how's it all going to fit? But I think that kind of put it in a decent sort of fashion. So all 3 articles actually were quite useful. I quite agree with you, Steve, in terms of it's a moving target, and Paul, you're correct in terms of the kind of the particular focus that I think that Steve mentioned as well. There's a lot of that kind of going on that as well. Okay, all right. So, guys, let's move on to our next topic, topic number 6, which is HPE's innovation black hole. So this was from a post by David Linthicum, who's quite well known sort of influencer and on online guy. I think he's actually mentioned in the in topic number 6, ironically. But this is kind of talking about HPE sort of having lost its way a little bit. And Paul, again, you and I kind of discussed a lot about, data center vendors and alternative cloud providers, and kind of, what's the latest game from the data center vendors and so on. So yeah, I'll take a little bit from you first on this, Paul. What's kind of your thought on the post?
Okay, well, as you and I know from our discussions, I get a little wound up with the data center tag on them because I treat these as legacy vendors, historic legacy vendors. And just given that I joined Burroughs in the early 80s and went through a Unisys and God knows what routine, this is a classic playbook for when technology moves on. Certain groups of vendors, if you think back to the 70s and 80s, the bunch disappeared. If you think back to the mini computer companies, the proprietary mini computer companies like Data General, like Digital Equipment, they disappeared too. I mean, and it's exactly the same. What David Linthicum is describing is exactly what I felt when I was inside Unisys, and it was going through that same sort of routine. And everything he says, I think, is pretty much spot on. It's inertia, it's myopia. It's one thing, and this might be an interesting sort of topic for another time, is companies that are product led rather than having a decent market focus. HP has always been, very product led. Most of the bunch companies were product led. I had a discussion. My brother joined IBM in the 1960s. He's older than I am by some way, and I remember meeting a whole bunch of IBM engineers back in early 80s, sitting around a table having my leg pulled roundly for joining Burroughs. But it was interesting that they said, if at that point in time, if IBM provided the marketing and Burroughs the technology, the rest of the world could have packed up and gone home, which was a really interesting, discussion. But what it brought forward was that you get this myopia in businesses, that's product-led businesses, where they simply can't see what's coming around the corner. So one of my interesting things, and whether I'm around to see it happen, is what happens to some of the product-led companies we've got today, because there's quite a few of them out there today. Now, I'm a marketeer, and therefore I might be expected to say this, but it desperately frustrating that people get plugged into their particular product set and simply can't break out of it. And you get a big American company like HP, like Burroughs, Unisys, all the old bunch companies, trying to get innovators to push out from the middle, always turn out to be really, really difficult. If there's any chink in the armor of American organizations, is that it's actually very hard to push up from the middle in most older organizations. Now, I've never worked inside AWS or the like, and I mean, Amazon, for example, did change the way in which companies come to market. I mean, their ability to get the investors to not to antagonize them for 10 years, was absolutely amazing. Because HP have got the problem that all the others have, is that if they miss their quarterly target by, whatever, and it can be all sorts of targets, profit, loss, revenues, growth, all those, every quarter, if they just miss it, their stock gets hit, and then, they go into this sort of death spiral of cut this and cut that to get the profit up, to do the others. And so this is a classic. This is a classic. I'm sure there's some great technology sitting inside HP, but they're in that classic death spiral. It will take many, many years because they're a big company. But will they ever break out of that? I doubt it.
See, what's your take on? I mean, I think HPE is not the only one in this particular boat. I kind of really put Dell and Lenovo, even Cisco to a degree, at least that server side of their business, maybe potentially even NetApp, kind of all, they've been, and Paul and I think have covered, at least we've discussed it, maybe not covered it directly, but certainly discussed it a number of times when it's come up in our previous topics, where we said, they kind of got caught by the whole cloud thing. So they kind of, went around trying to do cloud. Then it was kind of flirting with things like hyper-converged infrastructure. And then kind of, more recently, it's, AI and things like that. What's your take on this post?
I mean, it's a super interesting problem because a lot of these companies, when you look at their origins, it's like people in a garage, right? Smart people creating something amazing. They had complete freedom to just try something. And they're so successful that they become a behemoth that stops that exact thing from happening. And you see that across loads of companies where, Kodak famously invented the digital camera and thought this would damage our film business. Let's just keep it quiet, and then got overtaken by digital cameras coming anyway. I kind of feel that the only massive companies that succeed with innovation are the ones that actually aren't too scared to embarrass themselves.
Correct.
So we might mock Microsoft for the Windows Phone attempts, right? That, like, we could analyze why Windows Phone failed. We could do the same with Google over Google Plus. Like that, how can Google not succeed in creating a social network when we're all on it, right? We all have an account. But the point is, they were trying enough to have those failures and to go, well, you know what? We thought we could create a social network. We failed. We thought we could create a phone. We failed. And you could argue Apple with their liquid glass at the moment, it's definitely slightly embarrassing to their user base, but that's because they're still brave enough to try it, right? Whereas I think the temptation for a lot of companies, and maybe HP are in this trap, they're too scared to embarrass themselves with an attempt, which means that even if, with the R&D folks they've got left, because I know that they got rid of a lot of R&D folks in that exact cycle that you were talking about, Paul, where it was like, how do we bring some costs down so that we can kind of show something to the market? So they got rid of loads of R&D. But even those that are left, can their ideas even gain any traction, or are the people who are making the decisions too scared to actually try them? I think that's the crucial thing.
I mean, I sort of agreed with the post talked about kind of that brain drain, and and obviously they've made redundancies or layoffs, people call it. And I mean, I was one, I was that person in 2014, 2015, when IBM sold off their enterprise server business, their x86 server business, to Lenovo. So my job went from IBM to Lenovo. But I was already looking for another job by then. I already had, decided that the little cloud activity that I'd done, while at IBM with things like OpenStack, we had a proprietary VMware-based cloud that we put together as well, and various other things. And obviously, kind of the experience I got from, the 18 months I stayed at Lenovo, I had already decided to go. I already wanted to leave and go and do, open source and cloud, and because that's where really the thing was happening. And people kind of, I talk about that sometimes to students, because I do some STEM sort of conversations and STEM presentations, and I always say that's kind of a pivotal moment in my career. I consciously decided to move away from hardware and what the likes of IBM, Lenovo, and whatever we're doing. Sorry, Paul, you were going to say something.
Yeah, the one that really interested me was Dell, because it's a classic hardware company. But even in the early days of PCs, they were very, very customer focused. And if you actually looked at how they put together their PCs, they were quite different than other companies, because they had worked out that enterprise customers didn't need a particular facility that everybody else thought was the bee's knees and put it into theirs. So actually what they ended up with was a very much more customized, it wasn't customized for each customer, but they did their homework and got themselves an extra layer of margin that they could play with, because they were so focused on what's the really top-notch component I need to put in there to make this one work, and where can I put in a second-class one which wasn't as important. And that came directly from customer interface. And so, again, you look at companies and who simply, I like your idea about they don't have the ability to, the courage to make those decisions, but also they just were sort of completely blind to everything going on around them. So even product companies, and this is why I say I'm intrigued to watch the development of certain, let's face it, it's been the equivalent of the garage in a lot of places. I mean, the way in which the cloud has developed and all the technologies that surround that, it was classic cottage industry style, and of course it's been, so how's that been? And of course you're getting companies, one of the things that we've probably not talked about is the way in which the bigger companies in this new arena have swallowed up technologies, swallowed up smaller companies. Will that actually kill their innovation in years to come? We shall wait to see, because they certainly kill off some of the technologies that some of them they do it on purpose. They would kill off the technologies because they don't want that to exist. Other times they'll do it because it adds to their business. But traditionally, the larger a company gets, the harder it finds it to integrate some of those companies it takes on board. So again, we'll look at it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of extra points on the article. So, I do agree with, he does, David, I think Linthicum focuses on the numbers quite a lot and the ROI and things like that that he's seeing from HPE's bottom line, but also, as we said, the kind of the brain drain and the redundancies. But the other one that's interesting is the competitors are picking up. He thinks or he feels that Dell's sort of AI factory approach is, well, at least is something. It's just kind of a North Star, something you can kind of go towards and aim towards and try and maybe get some activity with customers around that. And whereas HPE's Green Lake and sort of their partnership approach has not really generated the same momentum. That's a good word, actually, momentum. Yeah, so Dell, I think, certainly have, had the momentum around the AI factory. They were there at, I don't know if you saw them, Steve, but they were there at KubeCon Amsterdam, and they were there at, previous events, even I think the London one that I attended, they've been there. So they are kind of trying to play in that space. I think they recognize this is where things should be. And if we're to be seen and our kind of badge needs to be seen and our logo needs to be, this is where it should be seen. These are kind of the areas. So Yeah, and HPE seems to be missing, and sort of an AI infrastructure is missing that sort of wave. What do you think, Steve, is what do you think is kind of the main thing that they may be missing?
Other than the courage to actually try stuff,
The balls.
I think.
Let's mince our words.
I think one of the things that we see with all of the big tech companies, they've started to get into this cycle of redundancies.
Yeah.
And doing one round of redundancies doesn't just impact the people that you let go. It starts like making everyone else shaky, right? Because the fear starts setting in. If you start doing large rounds of redundancies, and maybe they happen many times, and it starts feeling like a seasonal thing, you end up with a workforce that actually isn't in the kind of organizational culture where you can innovate, right? Because you're just waiting in fear for that next announcement, and your brain, like, we know that generative cultures are so important in all industries, right? Whether it's safety critical engineering, whether it's software delivery. So imagine how far away you've got from that generative culture if you keep on hitting these kind of 3,000, 5,000 redundancy rounds. You know, I am surprised humans can operate at all under those conditions. And I suspect that's one of the problems, is that you may only get rid of 5% of your workforce, but the impact is far greater than 5%, you know, because it's affecting everyone. And I think that's a real killer to that innovative process. And I can't recommend more Ron Westrom's book, Sidewinder, where he talks about the conditions that were necessary for them to innovate in this, you know, this Navy base when they were trying to develop these things, and how they had to, you know, yes, do a load of things in secret, and there were all kinds of political things involved, but on the ground, they could just get on with the process of innovating and trying stuff out. And that's what's missing in so many companies now. And I think bigger companies are far more likely to have that problem, because culture is hard once you get over 100 people, right? 150 is like the upper limit for the number of people that you can kind of like associate as a group. So,
it's really hard in that environment. We were effectively in Unisys, we went from 120,000 to 20,000 staff over the course of 15 years. You know, so we did exactly that. And you ended up bootstrapping all the time. You were trying to bootstrap stuff in a culture and a company that was used to much more formal processes than bootstrapping. It was soul destroying in the end. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's easier to get rid of the people than it is to get rid of all of the accumulated process. You know, and 120,000 people probably does need a lot of process. But once you've halved that, you know, it doesn't need the same process.
Well, that was the Burroughs-Sperry merger, and there was a lot that needed cutting because there was too much duplication. But even so, what you described, that sort of corrosive impact on culture, it was dreadful. Yeah.
Okay. I think we might have to revisit this, you and I, Paul, in our sort of regular monthly slot. I think there's lots of stuff to keep an eye on. But yeah, interesting. I think that David Linthicum's picked up on this. Not kind of usually as you know, disparaging about some of these vendors, but yeah, and like I said, I think this is a symptomatic of that whole kind of space and what it's really sort of experiencing at the moment.
The one thing I did disagree with him somewhat was he called them a fast follower. No, they're not.
Oh,
they aren't. The classic fast follower is Microsoft.
Yes, true.
They're the fast follower, and who jump, you know, and their organization jumps 180 degrees when they do go through on it. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, and I do agree, Steve. I mean, I've been on that side as well, where a whole bunch of people gets made redundant, and then you don't really dare to speak out anymore because you kind of maybe think you're next. as well. So people, that kills the innovation, certainly kills the morale and the sort of the whole sort of culture of it as well. So I do understand that. David goes on to offer some fixes as well, but we won't kind of go into those. I think people can just have a read of the post. But yeah, just as kind of pick one area to dominate and go after that, and hopefully we'll see. I mean, but not everybody's in the same boat. I mean, Lenovo has both the consumer side and the sort of the corporate, the enterprise side. Whereas obviously HP's kind of separated itself within HP Inc. on one side and HP Enterprise on the other. And this is specifically about obviously HPE in terms of the discussion, not HP Inc. But yeah, we'll see how things go.
Yeah, and that's HP Incorporated, I presume, rather than just the very profitable HP Inc. business.
Yeah. It's not the HP source, which is doing just fine. Thank you very much. Excellent. All right, guys. So let's fun one on the last topic. Just spend a few minutes on this one. The top 35 leading thought leaders. Now, the title what really got me first, which was the funny part that I picked up on, and I was like, is that really the title? I was like, yes, actually, that is the leading thought leaders.
Yes, rather than the non-leading thought leaders.
Yeah, as opposed to what? Yeah, exactly. And I was thinking, is this circular? Is this what they mean when they talk about kind of circular reasoning or circular, terminology or something? Anyway, so yeah, top 35. I have to say, I didn't really. This was kind of a somewhat frivolous exercise, but I kind of looked at some of the, the mentions in there, and I don't know. There is actually, I think they've done an introduction. So let me do them some credit here. They've done an intro in the post, and then they've talked about why cloud thought leaders matter right now. I thought they mattered whenever people want to put something out on LinkedIn, because I see this kind of nonsense out all the time. And then how was the list compiled? Now I didn't even bother reading how the list was compiled, but it's kind of just reflects in editorial curation, blah blah blah, credentials and whatever, and who we know and who's paid us to do this, and things like that, I guess. But category 1, hyperscaler leaders. I mean, you might as well just say, look, it's a 3-horse race and nothing has changed. It's Microsoft, it's AWS, and it's Google, basically. It's not like anything fantastically different there. What was your take on this particular category and then the rest of those categories?
Who were you aiming that one at first? Which one? Did you ask one of us to do it? Oh, it was me, was it?
Whichever one of you, just chip in. You don't have to.
I mean,
prompt you.
I'm working class British. I never jump the queue.
Steve, carry on.
Put your hand up, Steve.
I don't know. It's really interesting, isn't it? Like whenever you have like a list of influencers or a list of people, like, I mean, obviously you're going to see a lot of Scott Gu and you're going to see a lot of Mark Russinovich, because they're the face of Microsoft, right? And as you said, with these are the people who are kind of given a platform. But having said that, kudos, these are smart people as well. So, they say things that are super smart. So I kind of get why they're here as well. It's not like they've just paid to become an influencer. There are some folks who just set up Instagram and, try out products and don't really have any expertise. I'm definitely not accusing them of that. These are very smart people. But yeah, I think it makes sense for these people to be in this category.
I think for me it just seemed to be those kind of Werner Vogel's kind of but that's a bit obvious, isn't it? I mean, why can't we talk a little bit about the unsung heroes in AWS? Why is it always the leadership? And it's kind of, it just came across as they've selected them because they're just the leadership. But if you kind of, I mean, I've watched the tortured myself through the sort of 2 hours of Werner Vogel's keynote from the last sort of 3 or 4 AWS reinvents, and he just kind of seems to go off on a tangent on something that's got nothing to do with. He's actually stopped doing any tech announcements, all this announcement actually happened the day before, and some happened the day after. And he just kind of picks up on a few of the themes of those announcements, and then does a video where he's kind of, the actor in it or something. I don't know. I don't know. It seems weird. So anyway, my point is that it just seems to be a little bit around these are the guys who are the leaders, so we'll just have them on the list. Now, the interesting one for me was the second category, category 2, the cloud native pioneers. And apart from the Kelsey Hightowers and Brendan Burns, Joe Bader is on there. So Joe Bader is actually my ex-boss when I was at Heptio. I'm not sure if they mentioned Heptio by name. Yes, with Craig McCluckie. So there you go. So him, Craig McCluckie, and Brendan Burns were the 3 guys who actually developed Kubernetes while at Google. And then Joe Bader and Craig McCluckie went on to create or found Heptio, which was a Kubernetes startup based out of Seattle. And then Brendan Burns obviously went on to work on Microsoft Azure, and I believe he's still there. Heptio was acquired by VMware. That was kind of my exit sign out of Heptio. I was I think I was probably the first one to actually leave because I didn't really want to work for VMware. But that was acquired in 2018. I think they stayed on for a while, I guess, until their shares vested, and then they left VMware as well. But yeah, it's good to see like Joe Bader on there. Joe Bader is kind of geeky and nerdy and kind of a engineer guy, so he's very much in that sort of thing. Anything that kind of piqued your interest on category 2, Steve?
No. Again, it's kind of if you created Kubernetes, you probably should be on this list, right? These are the people who built the thing that turned into. I mean, if you look at the CNCF, Kubernetes is obviously the biggest project in the CNCF, right? And a lot of the other projects sit on top of that. Things like Argo and all these other things, are kind of part of that ecosystem that Kubernetes created.
Yeah. You almost sort of think, and I really can't comment on a lot of these guys because I'm not, so deeply involved in that sector. But when I was looking at the whole list, I was thinking, we're too close to it in one sense to be, who are the thought leaders? It's almost like you want to come back in 20 years and find out who was the real guy who made, XYZ work, who never really quite got the recognition. That's what I want to see.
The Hedy Lamars of the cloud native world. People who did they created the whole basis of Bluetooth and wireless was created by this person, but you've never heard of them. So shout out to Hedy Lamar, who should be in our list.
So yes, absolutely there. I mean, the one where I'm surprised you've sort of held your bullets, as it were, Richard, is obviously on the independent analysts and strategists. And again, interesting. The one for me, I mean, Lydia, she's really good, but the problem now is she's working for an organization that I think is sort of, it's almost like HP. It's way back there. It needs, the whole analyst research market is in turmoil at the moment because actually the whole market is changing, and Gartner is sort of recognizing it. But it's catching them flat. I mean, the way in which people buy now is very different, and I think some of the influencers there, have a limited shelf life. So again, are they real thought leaders? No, I think they're just good at sort of, pulling all together. From my perspective, I work for Bloor Research still as a sort of, visiting analyst. And we're looking moving towards being navigators. We're not research analysts. We're helping end users navigate this world that's out there. That doesn't make us thought leaders. In fact, we're just good at making connections. And so I looked at a lot of these. David Linthicum, bless him. Yes, he's made quite a a reputation for himself. Is he a thought leader? I wouldn't necessarily put it in those sort of categories.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just love to come back in, and I find Corey Quinn quite funny. He's quite amusing with what he does. But is he a thought leader? Don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing, getting a focus on cloud costs. Yeah, great. Okay, very good. Is that thought leadership? Don't know. So but again, I come back to, as a teenager, we had, everybody had lists. Growing up as a teenager in the 60s, we had all our rock stars. Who were the 35 best drummers? Ginger Baker at the top. And it would be different for everybody. And how the hell do you work out what a thought leader really is? How do you work out the best? So yeah, we love lists, but I can't say I get very excited by them.
Having said all of that, sorry, go Steve.
I was going to say, just about to interesting thought, because and this is a bit old school. VH1 used to do the 100 best rock albums, right? Countdown.
Yep.
And there would be the real greatest rock albums would be in there, because they would be in there every year when they updated it. They'd still be in there.
Yeah.
And then there would be current albums that people thought were great until the next year, and then they weren't even in there again. Right.
Yes.
And I think any list like this, it's going to have, yes, the classic rock albums are in this list. I notice Gregor Hope's in here. I find his work really compelling and really useful. And I'm like, yeah, probably that's one of the greatest rock bands. And then there'll be, I won't mention any names, but there'll be other people in here who are current and trendy, and we kind of get tired of them and they drop out of the top 100 greatest albums and we move on. Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, the list is long and distinguished. I mean, it's got some people that have actually been on live streams with, like Jeff Barr from he's a chief evangelist at AWS. We've done some stuff in the past. I do recognize Corey Quinn. I think Paul from the Clouded videos. And Jenna Kiram MSV, who I do appreciate a lot of the stuff he puts out, but I think I put him in that sort of, pushing AI in the wrong direction category as far as cloud native and CNCF is concerned. So I do like the technical kind of stuff he puts out, but again, I think he's kind of in that. For me, it's that.
And one of our presenters today made number 29 on the list.
She did
Cheryl.
indeed. Yeah, she did
well
indeed.
Done.
Yeah. And I didn't actually pick Cheryl to join us, nor did I see that list until kind of both. I decided on the topic, and then and Cheryl was joining, and then I actually looked at the topic and went, oh yeah, she's actually on the list. So yeah, fantastic that she's she's done that.
Hopefully we can all get some of the halo effect from being on the same live stream as Cheryl. I'm hoping to collect some of that.
I don't have an effect for a halo. Damn, I should have remembered that. Great. Excellent. All right. Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for Saim, who's unfortunately had some technical difficulties, who's had to drop out. Thank you, Saim, for helping out and doing your sort of director duties. Thank you also to Cheryl for joining us. Appreciate her input and insights. Steve, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Fantastic to see you again. Catch you at the next event, whatever that might be. AWS Summit, maybe, in London. I'll be there. I think I'll be live streaming from there. But yeah, thank you for your input. Great to see you again, and we'll definitely have you back on again at some point. We're going to find some more topics for us to do. And of course, last but not least, thank you, Paul, very much, my resident guest on Cloud State of Play. Appreciate again all your time and input into all of this. Our monthly Cloud State of Play, by the way, guys, was going to continue. So that's not gone away. We'll continue to do that. We're a little bit behind on that, but we will get the next episode out as soon as we can. But yeah, I appreciate all of that. So that will continue. As we said, this live stream has kind of really been experimental. So it's kind of our way of trying to see whether this kind of format's going to work, and whether we should maybe kind of do a little bit more of Cloud State of Play in a sort of a live stream kind of approach. So we'll see how things go. So if you do have any comments, if you liked it or didn't like it, or want to kind of make some recommendations or whatever, please do let us know. Drop us some stuff in the comment section of this particular video. Do it whenever you're watching this. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. As I said earlier, that really helps me out, helps me to kind of make more of these videos. It's not paying the rent yet, but we'll see how things go in terms of monetizing the channel. But it does help me to actually kind of get a little bit more cozy with the YouTube algorithm. So that'll be really appreciated. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to Saim Safdar's Cloud Native FM YouTube channel. So again, he puts out lots of really fantastic stuff. We do cooperate a lot on these kind of live streams, so that's really good for us. That's it. I think we're done. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate it again. Thank you for staying with me. And yeah, if you guys hang out for a minute, we'll just do the outro, and then we'll maybe pick up